If you've been following XRP, you probably think you already know the story, the lawsuit, the settlement, the partnerships, the predictions. But what if I told you there's something much bigger going on behind the scenes? Something that connects global institutions, digital currencies, and the transformation of the entire financial system, all pointing to one undeniable conclusion. XRP was never just a coin. It's the bridge they've been building in plain sight. This is Crypto Equation, and today we're uncovering what we call the XRP Secret Revelation. Because the truth about this asset, and the role it's quietly preparing to play, is far deeper than most investors realize. Let's start with what's visible, and then peel back the layers. In 2025, XRP trades below $3, consolidating while hype around Bitcoin ETFs cools off. To most people, that means XRP is sleeping. But behind the quiet charts, there's a coordinated shift happening in global finance, one that few are connecting the dots on. Ripple has been laying groundwork for years: regulatory settlements, institutional partnerships, and a global payments framework that looks eerily similar to what central banks are now trying to build with digital currencies. But here's the twist. Many of those same institutions that once dismissed XRP are now aligning their systems with Ripple's technology. And the reason? Speed, compliance, and control. Let's rewind to where this revelation begins. In 2012, when Ripple was founded, its mission was simple: to move value as easily as information. But unlike Bitcoin, Ripple didn't target retail investors. It targeted the system itself: banks, central institutions, and liquidity providers. They knew that the real revolution wasn't overthrowing finance, it was upgrading it. Fast forward to today, and that strategy looks prophetic, because as central banks race to launch digital currencies, the so-called CBDCs, they're running into a problem. Their networks can't talk to each other. China's system doesn't integrate with Europe's. Europe's doesn't talk to Africa's. It's fragmentation all over again. And yet, one network has already solved this problem: the XRP ledger. It's fast, interoperable, and regulatory compliant. The perfect bridge. Now here's where things get interesting. In 2025, several countries began testing cross-border settlement layers for digital currencies. In the Middle East, Asia, and even parts of Europe, these pilots are using technology with RippleNet's architecture. And in the US, while regulators have spent years debating definitions, private institutions have been quietly preparing integration points, partnerships that line up with Ripple's global reach. When you connect the dots, you realize something staggering. Ripple didn't lose time during the lawsuit. It used that time to position itself at the heart of the next financial system. While headlines said XRP is dead, they were signing deals in silence. The secret revelation begins here, with what's not being talked about. Most investors see XRP as a speculative token, but the institutions that matter see it as liquidity infrastructure. They don't care about short-term price. They care about throughput, stability, and compliance. In other words, while retail speculates, the system integrates. That's the first truth. The second truth: XRP is already connected to entities that touch trillions of dollars in daily value flow. RippleNet's network includes partnerships with banks, fintechs, and remittance giants that feed into SWIFT's replacement corridors. And now, with regulatory clarity in the US, they can legally scale that vision. The bridge isn't coming, it's already built. The world just hasn't been told how connected it is yet. So why call this a secret revelation? Because the clues are public, but almost nobody's paying attention. When Ripple talks about ODL, on-demand liquidity, it's not just about faster payments. It's about removing pre-funded accounts. The old system where banks have to lock billions just to send money across borders. With XRP as a bridge asset, those funds can move instantly, globally, and efficiently. It's a liquidity revolution, one that unlocks trillions in trapped capital. Now imagine being the network at the center of that flow. That's XRP's role. That's the revelation. Here's where the story deepens even more. While everyone was fixated on crypto prices, Ripple was meeting with the same global regulators that shape monetary policy: the Bank of England, the IMF, the World Economic Forum, and recently, partnerships in the Middle East with central banks exploring digital asset integration. These aren't conspiracy theories, they're public records. But when you line them up, the picture becomes clear. Ripple positioned XRP as the utility layer beneath the new digital monetary system. The same institutions that dismissed crypto are now building on its backbone. They just don't call it crypto. They call it tokenization, digital liquidity, and interoperable settlement. Different words, same technology, same bridge. Let's pause and zoom out. Why would institutions quietly use Ripple's technology instead of creating their own? Because interoperability is hard. You can't rebuild 50 years of global finance overnight. Ripple's XRP ledger is already proven, scalable, and energy efficient. It meets compliance requirements, supports stablecoins, and now, thanks to the EVM sidechain, even supports smart contracts. That's the missing piece. Because the moment smart contracts meet institutional settlement, the XRP ledger becomes more than payments. It becomes programmable finance. That's what the world hasn't fully grasped yet. Now let's talk about 2025's hidden shift, the liquidity awakening. We're entering a world where every asset becomes digital. Stocks, bonds, real estate, even commodities. This isn't speculation. It's already happening. BlackRock and JP Morgan are openly piloting tokenized funds. Goldman Sachs is building digital asset platforms. And guess what connects tokenized assets across networks? A bridge that can handle compliance, speed, and liquidity. Sound familiar? That's XRP's design from day one. So when Marcus Thielen talks about Bitcoin's liquidity cycles, and Cathie Wood warns about innovation being ignored, they're all describing the same macro wave. The shift from analog finance to digital infrastructure, and XRP sits right at the intersection. Here's something most investors completely miss. While others argue about price predictions, Ripple has been accumulating partnerships with government-backed entities in Dubai, in Singapore, in the UK, jurisdictions that embrace regulatory clarity. And once one domino falls, the others follow. In 2023, we saw how Bitcoin ETFs unlocked billions in liquidity overnight. When an XRP ETF arrives, and make no mistake, filings already exist, the same floodgate effect could happen again. But here's the kicker. This time, it won't just be speculation. It'll be infrastructure adoption. The money flowing in won't be retail chasing hype. It'll be institutions positioning for the new system. Let's connect one last dot, the timeline. By 2030, the IMF expects nearly half of all central banks to issue or pilot digital currencies. At the same time, global tokenization markets are projected to exceed $16 trillion in value. Those numbers aren't random. They represent a once-in-a-century transition of how value moves, and every transition needs a bridge. XRP's architecture, high speed, low cost, interoperability, and compliance isn't a coincidence. It's a blueprint that's already being tested at scale. That's the revelation. XRP isn't waiting to be adopted, it's being embedded. Now let's talk about what this means for investors. If the world's financial plumbing quietly migrates to tokenized settlement, the demand for neutral liquidity assets skyrockets. Stablecoins handle domestic use. CBDCs handle national control. But bridges, assets like XRP, handle the global layer. They connect everything, and those connections are worth more than anyone can currently model. Because it's not just about transactions, it's about trust. When central banks need a neutral asset that's not controlled by one government, XRP fits the bill. That's the kind of macro positioning that makes small investors early and late adopters irrelevant. So, why aren't we hearing about this on mainstream media? Because financial revolutions don't start on the front page. They start in documents, partnerships, and test pilots that the public ignores until it's too late. Remember how the internet was dismissed in the 90s? Or how Amazon was mocked for selling books online? That's exactly what's happening with XRP today. While the majority laughs, the minority builds positions. And 5 years later, those positions become leverage. That's how every paradigm shift works. Let's tie it all together. Ripple's global partnerships, regulatory clarity, and technological evolution are converging right now. The world's financial elite are preparing for a liquidity future that requires exactly what XRP provides. And the secret revelation is this: they've already chosen the bridge. They just haven't announced it yet. When that announcement comes, it won't be a shock to those who've been paying attention. It'll just confirm what the data already shows. XRP was designed for this moment. So here's the takeaway. Don't think of XRP as a speculative token. Think of it as the digital infrastructure for global value transfer. Because once you understand that, the charts stop looking random, the slow price action stops feeling frustrating, and the future stops feeling uncertain. What's happening now isn't a delay, it's a setup. The stage is being built, the actors are rehearsing, the system is aligning, and when the curtain finally rises, the world will call it a breakthrough. But you'll know, it was a revelation, years in the making. If this gave you clarity, subscribe to Crypto Equation, where we uncover the truth behind the markets, decode hidden trends, and help you see opportunity before the world does. Tell me in the comments below, what's your XRP revelation? Do you believe it's already being integrated behind the scenes? Remember, opportunities don't wait. They reward the ones who were ready before everyone else noticed. This is Crypto Equation, and I'll see you in the next one.